Hello, and welcome to DevonWay's Tips and Tricks video series.
All right, so we're going to get into a calculated field today, the Concatenate Field. So if you've used VI before, you've probably created some reports, and they maybe look similar to this one on the screen, where you have a bunch of columns that have very little data in it, and then there's one column that has a tremendous amount of text, and it gets squoze into just one column, so you're wasting a lot of space on that report. I imagine there's probably a better way you'd let her view it and have that text on those large fields span the width of the page. So there is a way to do it in VI, and we're going to show you that now. And an easy way to do that and have the title a little more easy to read is using the concatenate function. So I'll be switching over to my my desktop and show you how to do that as well. So, and what we'll be doing, creating that concatenated field, is producing a report that does this. So basically it allows that large text field to span the width of the page, but still gives you the other information you want in a easy to read format where you can see the various elements that were previously in columns. So here you can see that this is the CR, the title is this, the workflows and implementation, it's assigned to Bill, and it was created on this date. So I'm going to swap over to my desktop now, and we're going to show you some of this. So be prepared. So if we look here, so here is the report I drafted initially, and you can see if you look at it, it has this description of the condition column with all of this fake text in here that is pretty wide or pretty narrow and takes a lot of the page vertically when these other columns are pretty thin. So that's pretty easy to build that report. You just simply drag those fields you want into the columns, and those are going to be displayed in this manner. So one potential way to somewhat solve it is this next example. What I have done is basically just have dragged all of these fields into the group by section. So since they're all the same object, the group by is just going to be one. So it basically lists all of those items separated by a column. So here we have the condition or the identifier. The title is here. The workflow task is here. The assigned to is here. The problem can be on this is if you have multiple pages of this, especially if it's in a printed format, users may not know what some of these fields represent. So if someone is unfamiliar with it, they're going to pull this up and they're going to say, well, I see it has Matt Sack's name here and I see this date, but does that mean that it's assigned to Matt, or does that mean that he created the CR? And is this date the due date, or is that the date it was created, or was that another date? So while this method works, what I want to show you though is the ability to use this concatenate function to make that a little more clear. So here is what I've done with that one. So you'll notice it has just a little bit of text before it that says this is the CR. That may be a little repetitive because CR is in the identifier of that. And then it says, here's the title, here's the workflow task as implementation, it's assigned to Bill, and it was created on the date of 8/16. And then that description title, the description of the incident just is the ability to run the whole width of the page. So you can fit more on there and there's not as much wasted space. So how we do that is using the concatenate function. That's what we'll go into a little bit of detail here. So you'll notice this field that is being grouped by is called new title. And I created that by creating a calculated field here. So if you hover over this icon, say create calculated field, it's going to bring you up this formula builder window. Since I've already had it built, I'm just going to open it. If you ever, these bold items down here with the FX function, those are calculated fields that have been created. So if I just edit that existing one, we're going to see how that was created. And don't be overwhelmed by the all of the text within here. I'll break down and show you what all that means. It's really not as intimidating as it may appear. What we do though is we basically just bring in this concatenate function, and all it does is basically says we want to list the text fields that we want as well as any text that we want to add to that. So what we've done here, and when I flip back to the slide deck, I have this highlighted a little more obvious for you, and you'll be able to take that away with you and have something you can reference on how to use this particular function. But what we do basically is just add some text. So we've added the CR with a colon, and then the field is identifier. And then we go on to the next one. And what I like to do is just break up the little bit of the text with these hyphens. And what that does is that just lets the eye more easily see these break between these fields that are concatenated. That, of course, isn't necessary. That's just something I like to do when I do it. It's completely up to whoever is using this function to do it in the manner they want. But that's just one way of breaking that up, so it puts a little space between all those fields. So all it does basically is that point is just sits there and just adds a title and a description and a text field, a text field description, and then the actual field. And it just keeps repeating that as often as you want. You can add as many fields as you want to that. And the end result, once you create that, it'll look like this, and then you simply just group by it. If I hadn't grouped by it, it's going to look quite silly, not something you want. So you just need to make sure you group by that new field, and then it comes across in that manner. Something you can do to make it a little bit easier to read possibly is to add a spacer to it. So if we just add a space to the end of this, front of this, it indents a little bit and maybe helps that make it a little easier to read. So that's an option there as well. Another thing you can do with it is I've created another one called lead info here. So if we just add that one to that, I just added it to the columns, and now we see across here a little bit of two fields that are combined. So it has Bill Ewer in training or Matt Sachs in Bravo store. And what those are is just a combination of the team, the lead person and the lead department. So I could have easily added two different fields with that information. But if you wanted to bring that together a little bit, that's just another example of what you can do there, is to put that type of information into a concatenated field, and it takes up a little less space. One thing I need to show you, and this is covered more in detail in the slide deck as well, is you're going to notice on this concatenated field for new title, I have this date created field is referencing this other concatenated field of DCF for date created field. There's a reason I had to do that. If we add just a regular date field within a concatenated function, it appends all of the time as well. So you get the hours, the minutes, the seconds, and it gets a little unpleasant to look at. So what I did to get over that is created a separate calculated field called DCF. And that one actually uses three other functions to build that date. So what it does is that it ends up building the date in the format you see here of just month, day, and year. So that DCF field is a concatenate field as well, but within it, it's taking three different functions: the month number, the day number, and the year, all from the same field, and it appends those together along with these hyphens to create that date field in the manner we want to display it. That's not necessary, but if you want to avoid having all of the rest of the timestamp included within that date field, this is something you'd want to do. And again, I have this summarized in the slide deck so you can easily reference that. So one other thing before we jump back to the slide deck is another possibility you can do here as well. So I have this other one built, and for this one, I've expanded the report to include all of the actions as separate rows. And then I've added the description field to that title field. So if we open up that new title here, we will see that there's been one more addition to it. That's this section here where it says description and then the description of the condition. So that large text field is now also part of the group by, and then we've allowed all of the child actions underneath it to be easily listed on their own rows. So that's just another possibility to tidy up any reports you may use in that manner using that concatenate function. So there's one caveat that we need to be very careful of here though, and you need to keep an eye on. So for example, what often happens if someone goes to create a calculated field, they may have all of this text and they don't want to type it into this window, and they may want to use Microsoft Word, for example. So there's something you need to be careful of. If we look here on Microsoft Word, so here I pasted in some information into Word, and you notice these quotes are correct. But if I go in here and type, you'll notice that the single and double quotes are not straight up and down like there. So if I was to copy this out of Word and paste it into this function here and try to get it to work, it's going to give me an error. So hopefully you don't spend hours on hours on hours trying to figure out why that's not working, when all it really is those quotes are incorrect. So what you can do is always just make sure you use the quotes from within this tool here. So I just copied and replaced those, and then it validates successfully. Another option is to use a Notepad. That's what I find myself doing often, is just use that. So if I open up Notepad here, you guys shouldn't have seen that, so never mind. Make sure you erase that from your memories. If I type within Notepad, it'll have the right quotes on there. So if you're going to use a tool outside of the window to build that formula, I recommend just using Notepad, or just being careful and cautious of that. Otherwise, you'll find yourself unable to finish that if you use Word. Okay, let me switch back to the slideshow. And here's a very busy summary of what we just went over, but I think this will help you. So when we created the new title field example, there was that long string of text. So really it's just two types of components there to it. So all of the, whoops, getting too jumpy there. The yellow is just basically all the fields. So we combined the identifier, the title, the workflow task, assigned to, and that field we created for date created. And then the text in between all of those is just what's highlighted here in green. So in between any single quote, you can put whatever you want in there. And then separating each of those sections is simply just a comma and a space. And again, be careful when you're using Word, as that may cause some issues. And here is the text to concatenate that date created field using the month number, day number, and year functions within that. So that covers the concatenate. Hopefully that's something you find useful.
Thank you for taking time to watch this DevonWay tips and trick video. We hope that you have enjoyed it and that you'll be able to apply what you have learned to help you be more efficient in your job. And remember, you can view a categorized list of all DevonWay tips and tricks videos at docs.devonway.com at the link below. Thanks. Goodbye.